on some of the things that don't work quite as well?
Just to make a final comment on that point, yeah, I believe that there's a, I applaud your chemical engineering friend who decided to go into teaching, because that's rare. I mean, most times they would go right into some industry, private industry, where they can make big bucks. But two programs that we worked with recently, my company and Philadelphia Education Fund, I don't know if everybody's familiar with them, but they're a local organization here in the city that actually has a teacher recruiting program that they recruit teachers from industry. And they really make it attractive to them to sort of pick and choose the disciplines they want to teach. It's STEM related, but that's one program that I believe is pretty successful. I'm sure you're
repeat your name of the program.
Sorry. It's the Philadelphia Education Fund Teacher Outreach Program. It's got another formal name. NOICE is one of the programs. Right. I'm sorry.
Term teachers. I don't know if it's the same.
It could be it's probably the same theory, but another one was speaking on the veterans in the military, is that we tried to do an outreach also for returning vets that had degrees that were in civil service, when they go into civil teaching as a form of recruiting teachers, because just face it, teaching is not presented as an attractive career in this country these days. It really isn't. And you said your friends, co-workers look down on her like, you must be crazy. Why are you doing this? But it's a marketing ploy that has to happen. It has to get people really psyched up and excited about, why do you teach? Why would you want to see somebody succeed and get that picked into somebody's brain?
Although I will say this, I do a lot of engagements with universities in Philly and outside of Philadelphia. One really wonderful thing that happens is, I would say almost invariably, I get about a third of the audience to come up and talk to me about their passion for wanting to engage K-12. And it ranges from engineering students to undergraduate and graduate, actually, to sometimes even postdocs in the biolife sciences. And that coupled with, I can talk about my particular profession, the biolife sciences, you've got a lot of people who are all dressed up with no place to go. I mean, a lot. PhDs, and they can't get a job. Or they're doing their third or fourth postdoc. And you're in your mid-30s, and your wife or husband is looking at you like, okay, it's time. You start thinking about other things than the laboratory. I think that actually represents a grand opportunity for us to begin to, your point, market the teaching profession as a great alternative. But we've got to figure out, to your point, Steve, we've got to, I'm almost of the opinion, we have to blow up our high schools. I mean, they're dinosaurs.
Turn off the tape.
I mean, it's just, yeah. No, I'm just blowing up it metaphorically. Reality blowing up. I mean, Bill Gates said it 10 years ago that the American high school is obsolete. It is. It's obsolete. It's built off a post-industrial model. It's like the Edison. It needs to go. It's ugly. The buildings failed. It's the ugliest thing on the planet. And that's pretty much our high schools. And our kids are not, by the time they're 15, 16 years old, they figured out that the system really doesn't care about them. And so I think we have to really get outside the box and begin to think about putting our kids, our teachers, in different environments where this thing we call STEM can happen almost organically because we've re-engineered it. So.
It doesn't also always have to be the people changing professions and going into teaching. There are all kinds of people probably in this room and well beyond that have some time that can devote to after-school activities. I mean, a big problem with STEM is people just don't know what they don't know and what opportunities are potentially out there. And so I know that there are all kinds of programs now that people are thinking about after they've gotten as far as they want to get in their career, and they're developing these after-school programs where they're providing all kinds of resources.
Unfortunately. If you have comments, we'll reserve those for the end. So after you was the gentleman in the front here.
Herb Green, Temple University, TU teach. Well, what I was thinking about was how would you involve PGW, PICO, and other Philadelphia institutions, businesses, to help provide incentives for students to learn about STEM and teachers also?
Give them real-world problems. Take a scenario where PGW had to deal with an outage, for instance, or maybe there was an accounting issue, and break up that problem, disaggregate it based on skills and different dimensions that can be put into units. I really like this. Dr. Cox was talking about military. You have modules. Well, why not take that kind of approach where you take a real-world problem and you scale it to the level of where the students are, where you have PGW engineers and professionals working with teachers to design curriculum modules that are inquiry and project-based, and the teachers get to learn, the students learn around the content with the professionals that can bring in the real-world environment. I think kids, at least my experience has been, it's much more engaging for students. It's connected to something that's real.
Or getting involved in like challenges or developing programs where, the incentives we talked about before, kind of changing the shift. So maybe PGW sponsors a competition that, awards a scholarship at the end of it. Or a lot of the, Amelia referenced it before, like the robotics programs in the school district, they're all based on, robotics itself is based around, real world issues. But it's not just about, designing and building and programming the robot, but it also ties in the real world theme. So say for instance, our first Lego League was our middle school robotics competition. Last year was a food factor challenge. So students were charged with the responsibility of doing research projects and developing a presentation based on eliminating contamination in the food distribution process. So not only are they building and programming robots, but they're putting the real world themes to it. The year before that was a body forward challenge. Students were coming in with prosthetic devices and solving different like bioengineering challenges. So they're seeing the application of what they're doing in science classrooms, what they're doing in math classrooms, sometimes, but just really kind of bringing the real world application into it so they can see what they're doing and how it ties in. So students, to kind of get to your question, the students were actually going out and interviewing USDA officials and going out and going into the places that had to do with these real world challenges. So just kind of putting you can definitely get, NSBE can get involved, like Emilio, other people sitting in this room have been, Mike have been judges at the robotics competitions, and it just, you can't really quantify what it does when the students see other people who are not just, they see people in the neighborhood all the time, but you can look at this person, he has a PhD in science, or this is an engineer, and like, wow, and really, I didn't even know they existed, and that's the kind of response that you get from the students. So just getting involved in, I'm always looking for judges for robotics competitions. For anybody who's interested, you have 5 or 6 hours on Saturday to donate. But yeah, just, I don't know.
I also think that it's in their economic best interest to have an educated workforce in Philadelphia. And there are other cities that do, where the private sector does a much better job of supporting STEM education for their own self-interest. And although it's the right thing to do, we might be more successful reaching out to them, using the economic argument that to the extent that they can support the workforce, that they would, and some of it is just resources in this environment.
We're an economic development company that works with advanced manufacturers, and the #1 issue they have is finding skilled workers. So a lot of these companies have gone out and adopted schools. I know iPraxis used to do that. I'm not sure if they're still doing it, but they would get companies to adopt local schools and go out, and these folks would be dedicated to at least going in and mentoring, judging competitions, running science clubs and things after school. So there's ways to get companies involved, but if you talk to a lot of these high-tech companies around here, you'll find out that they're importing people from other parts of the country because they can't find the skills.
Or overseas.
Or overseas, exactly. Or they're moving out of the area completely because they can't find the workers. So I could talk about that forever, but that's one of the things we hear constantly. If you're Mr. Businessman, Mr. CEO, you need workers, get involved with your local schools, your local tech schools, the VOTEX, which I am a strong proponent of. So there's a lot of ways for companies to get involved.
You got to give them the religion. They got to want to do this. While I was at Temple, I was asked by Center for Social Policy and Community Development, Cy Rosenthal. I don't know if you remember Cy when he was there. And he asked me to work with people from PHA. He said, Steve, we need you to develop a program that basically involves science and technology with the Philadelphia housing situation. So I said, wow. I said, and that's probably a good thing, because you have a lot of people that you have to put in a particular area, and how do you service them? I said, okay, so we put this program together, and we call it Truth, Teaching Residents to Understand the Technology of Housing. And we basically went through how many people live in so many square blocks, how many buildings would you have to build, what would be the cost of doing something like that, and the students developed it. It worked out very well. So it was just looking at something that they were familiar with, because they lived in the project, and they know how many times the elevators were broken, okay, and how dirty it was, and how things used to look and how they look now. It was very interesting how that played out. I guess the point that I'm trying to make is there are just some basic fundamental things that will allow you to teach all the concepts of science, math, technology, sociology, and everything else if you just sit down and think about it. I don't know necessarily that teachers are necessarily equipped. If you have somebody that's an engineer that's basically looking at something as a problem that needs to be solved, they're going to try and apply approaches to come up with a solution. So it kind of goes back to, how are we training our teachers in colleges and universities? What's happening in colleges of education, at least in our region, and what do we need to do to help them improve the process? So that's, we probably talked about 10 or 12 different things, and each one of these elements are part of the total puzzle to improve the quality of education in the region. But somebody has got to kind of hatchery. Hopefully it will be the school district, or the colleges and universities in partnership with the school district. Just a combination of things. I've been asking, making an issue for each one of the colleges and universities in Philadelphia to identify a cluster of schools, high school, middle schools, elementary schools, and just blow them out of the water. That this is your whole lifestyle from now on is going to be creating this as a model educational environment that feeds into your institution. Now, that's a challenge, but I think for somebody that's really in education, that's the kind of thing you want to do. Boy, you can write papers about that forever. I mean, I'm telling you, it's a research feast. So we'll see how it goes.
I just want to again, make two quick points. I was just to pick off what Gary was saying, that there are a lot of, the economy's not good right now, but in the future, as jobs continue to grow, the jobs will grow in those areas where people are mostly not qualified to be in. What we're going through now is like at my job as a microcosm of sort of what's happening in the national scale. We're hiring tutors for English and math, and we have droves of English tutors just knocking down the door. No math tutors, none. And the ones, some people are so desperate for the job, they'll take both tests. There's like a little assessment to take. They'll take both tests. I mean, completely bomb the math, but it's like any chance, they have to get a job. I mean, there's droves of English people coming in. And I'm like, well, where are the math people? And they're like, we don't have it.
The math people at Swans are working for a finance company.
Right. But the issue is the people that are qualified math are taking these, taking these jobs in finance companies, a place where people do math, but as a society, we don't have an appreciation for math and science, where people that didn't study it can't just do basic arithmetic and fractions and ratios and things like that. So it's like, and
reach out to the Philadelphia universities and ask for their math majors or their engineering majors to come and help.
Definitely.
While they're undergraduate.
And some of the college students are coming, but their schedules conflict and different things like that. So all the math we've had is just, I can't do that class Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It's like, okay. Well.
And it's volunteer?
No, it's paid.
Oh, okay.
It's paid.
What hours?
Especially it's $12 an hour, and for 25 hours. And if I have somebody that knows remotely knows math, I will hire them on the spot. I need math 25 hours a week with the possibility for more.
All right.
I don't got 25.
Well, we can talk about that.
It's 7:45, and I want to just get these last few questions out. Do you guys think those can wait so we can, if other people have to go, I know people with 7:45. You guys want to approach the panel just directly, or get this one last question in right here? You first, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just had a different type of question for the panel. So I read a statistic some years ago done by Florida International. It said kids who failed algebra were 4 times as likely to drop out of school. And so
In the highest spell subject, is
yeah,
in
and
the
the
entire district.
yeah, and so I've only been in Philadelphia for about 2.5 years. The dropout rate is about 50%.
Yep.
And so every time you go anywhere, and I am an engineer for Boeing, and everyone always talks about when we discuss STEM academics, we always approach it with the approach of kids actually going into math, science, and engineering fields, and so do corporations. However, of course, with a 50% dropout rate, there's a direct correlation to the crime rate, which is a direct correlation to the tax rate, which means, I mean, it really all affects everything that we do. And so instead of taking an approach of how do we get more engineers, how in the world do we get more kids to graduate from high school with the knowledge that we already have? Because it's just basic. So if we attack that, we all make money in the long run because all of our taxes go down, and the city is more attractive for everyone that's actually here. And of course, you're going to get a certain amount of kids to stumble into math and science because now they get algebra. If you don't get algebra, you're not going anywhere else. So how do we do it? Or not, how do we do it? I had a program out in Seattle, but how have you guys been taking a look? I know you were saying you hit the streets, and of course, I'm not a fan of going to the parents. I just assume lost cause. How do you get the kids? How do you get the kids?
Creative. We started, as we started this West Philadelphia charter school concept, before it became a charter school, it was a community school. So we literally, guys that grew up in the same neighborhood I grew up in, we went out, and most of them were teachers in the school district. We would go out to the areas where we knew there was conflict, where people were fighting, drugging, and there's a whole host of things. Now, I was younger and I was a little crazy, so I wasn't worried about conflict or confronting anyone. But at the end of the day, it was not about fighting, it was more about convincing them, getting into their minds that there was some better thing that they could do, because here we were out trying to support them. Let's just try this. First of all, let's play some ball. Let's see if you got any game. If you got a basketball game, first off, we're going to take you to the hole. Okay, so good that we do that. So then while we're playing ball, then we're talking about some other things. Well, what are you doing other than playing basketball? Well, why don't you come down to Harambe and let's talk about some other things. We talk about some cultural things, and we try to engage them. Now, again, this was a small community, kind of West Philadelphia area that we were working with. And everybody can't do that. Everybody doesn't have the same kind of time or commitment. But we realized that we needed to go where they were to get them into the next level of education that we were trying to do. And I'm not expecting everybody to go out in the corner and get in the middle of some knuckleheads. But there's some other ways to capture them. And I'm kind of excited about this whole concept of the technology, getting them to use the technology to do something other than play games and make phone calls. I think that's one goal.